Oh, hi. Welcome.
Hi.
As my computer decides to be super, super slow and unresponsive, we're just going to power through this and see how this turns out. Hopefully, everything I'm saying is coming across. Um,
I got you.
yeah,
I got you.
you got you. Okay, cool.
I
Yeah,
got you.
everything just kind of went cattywampus on this end, but it's Tuesday afternoon. We took a week off. We're back. How you doing, Doug?
Not too bad, Matt. How are you?
I'm okay, just dealing with technology and heat, doing a whole
Yeah.
thing. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Enforcing the Fundamentals. As you can tell, it's not going down as our number one intro of all time. I am Matt. I'm sitting here as always with Doug Harding because his name's on the show. So that's how we do things. We are past the hockey season, so we're starting to see a lot of trade rumors and some.
Well,
I mean, already. I mean, the almost the second the cup was handed out, big news out of Vancouver. Big swing taken by the Vancouver Canucks. They went out and grabbed Evander Kane.
mhm.
Um, a lot of speculation. This could be sort of preemptive in the case of Brock Bozer deciding to go elsewhere. I believe
That's
he's an
it.
unrestricted free agent
Yeah,
if
but he
memory
signed.
serves. What's
He
that?
did sign. He did sign.
Bozer has signed since
Yeah,
then.
yeah,
Okay, see,
yeah. Demko and oh my goodness, Connor. So yeah, Vancouver did okay, and
Vancouver did
yeah,
okay, and adding Evander Kane, his
mm,
maybe not the greatest locker room reputation out there.
well, he
You
had a
know,
good locker room reputation in Edmonton, which is a switch because a lot of the locker rooms he's been in, he hasn't. We'll say he hasn't agreed with. So it's not that they didn't agree with him, but yeah, there were those rumors. He's a good hockey player, and he's got a little bit of the toughness and the goal scoring ability that they basically lost when they traded Miller. You
mm-hmm.
know, I mean, Miller's trades are turning. You know, we hope that they turn out to be really good, uh, but they got to kind of prove themselves yet. So Evander Kane is it's I wouldn't say it's a big question mark. You know what kind of hockey ability he has. Now
Mm-hmm.
if I know a couple of the players in Edmonton and they've said that he was actually a really good guy in the dressing room in terms of support. So you know, maybe he's changed, or maybe it was all uh, bowl of breakfast crap. I don't know. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's Vancouver's trying. They're trying to make signing Demko. I mean, they've got three outstanding goaltenders now. They got a goaltender who won the American Hockey League. Uh, from everything that I heard, without him, they
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't have. And they got an outstanding goaltender from last year, and they've got Demko, who the year before that was, people were saying he was the best goaltender in the NHL. So I guess they have to settle in on who they're going to keep and what asset they can move to improve their team a little bit more. But yeah, it's certainly not all bad news for sure.
No, I wouldn't say it's all bad news. It does seem to be coming together. You know, hopefully the locker room is, it's hopefully it's a square peg in a square hole with Evander Kane on this. He's been around for a while. Most importantly, he's got some big game experience. He was on those Chicago teams when they were sort of dominating the league there for that stretch of
Yeah,
years.
no,
And
that was the other Kane.
oh, was it?
There's two Canes. Yeah, they're both great hockey players. But
Well,
yeah,
there we go. I
but
got to turn
he's
on the news a little bit more.
we should have conferred before. No, it's good for these things, Matt. So yeah, no, and he's been a very good hockey player on the ice wherever he's gone. His biggest problem is, generally he blows a fuse and will lose it on the
Hmm.
ice, or he'll lose it in the dressing room, or and he seems to have grown out of the dressing room thing, but seen a couple of times with Edmonton at the end of the year where he gets frustrated or aggravated, or wants to demonstrate his prowess as a dominant hockey player, and he'll take a ton of penalties that kill you. And when one guy starts that, other guys jump in. They're all jumping in to help each other, and unfortunately, sometimes they're helping them the wrong way.
Yeah, well, I mean, you take these swings, and not everyone is going to go over the fence. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's it kind of is what it is with everything there.
Yeah.
And they're not the only one. The Canucks aren't the only ones making moves. The Kane thing was so quick after the Cup. That was an incredibly big swing, incredibly early on. For a hot minute there, I was kind of wondering, it's like, or are they just hanging on to him to use him as a bargaining chip down the line?
Well, they moved their bargaining pretty quick.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It just seemed very quick that they did that, rather than wait a little more and see what was out there. But you know what? They have people that have probably been working on this for a lot longer than anybody would guess. I mean, the scouts are out there, the office would be out there, conversations would be had. I mean, the Canucks did not go deep into the playoffs, to say the least. I don't even think they got in that particular pool again.
They didn't even get in the pool. Yeah.
Yep. No, they definitely did not. They were out. They weren't the first ones mathematically eliminated, but they weren't the last ones either. So
they hung in until just about the last 4 or 5 games, where it was a mathematical probability, although a long math. But they played decent. Well, they played hard trying to get there. So there's a core of something that's useful there. It's and obviously, for winning the American Hockey League, I do know that they've got some real good experience in players there, as well as really good young players. But how many of those players can transition to the NHL? I mean, Seeloff, he started with Vancouver last year, and everybody was looking for him to do wonderful things. I don't know whether the pressure got to him, but he returned to Abbotsford and basically led them to the American Hockey League Championship. So, he's a pretty quality goaltender, and what he did for Vancouver in the playoff run the year before that was pretty amazing. So, obviously he's got talent. I'm not quite sure what happened at the beginning of the year last year in Vancouver. Maybe a loss of confidence. He went in as a third goaltender into the playoffs, and by the third game of the playoffs, he's the only goaltender left, basically. So and he did outstanding. Maybe he didn't have time enough to feel the pressure, but he played outstanding in that playoff run Vancouver had. So he's got the ability. Maybe there's somebody out there that want to trade for him and use that ability, but or maybe Vancouver figures he's going to have it. But I mean, they've got 2 exceptional goaltenders. One that just a few years ago people talked about as being the best goaltender in the NHL, and Patrick Demko. So they have lots and lots of value as far as goaltending goes. It's just what are you going to do? I've never had 3 amazing goalies before, so I've had some amazing goalies that I've worked with. But
I mean, that's not the worst problem to have. But I mean, getting sort of around to the other side of my point, Edmonton did go deep into the playoff pool, very, very deep, and to have
not as deep as they did the year before. They were 1 game short of what they were the year before.
I mean, they weren't quite at the other end of the pool. But they had that quick turnaround to offload a fairly key player to Vancouver. So you got to think that there had to be something behind the scenes where it's like, You don't want to be here. We don't want to. I don't. You know what I mean? It's like it may not be a "we don't want you here" thing, and it might not be a "we don't want you here" thing, even though you want to be here. You never really can tell with these things until the autobiographies start getting written. Years after these guys
After they're retired. Yeah. A lot of that stuff comes up.
And then
That's
you have
why
to
I read
remember
every book I can on ex-players.
Yeah, but not everyone is gonna write a book either.
No.
So there is never that guarantee. They might show up and do a podcast or something like that, but it's one of those things where I don't know if it will ever really know the story, but to me it was so quick. It's like, oh wow, there was some hustle back there.
Yeah.
There had to be some motivation on the Edmonton side, whether it was Kane himself or the office, or the only thing they agreed on was
like they didn't swap him as a top player for a top player.
Yeah.
So it
was a draft pick.
Time to move.
Edmonton got a draft pick out of it.
4th round.
Like that just screams Edmonton and Evander were mutually breaking up. So anyways, let's get back here. We got some comments. We have our most loyal listener, viewer, Jeff. Hey buddy, hope all is well with you as well. You didn't actually miss the show last week, as I told you in the group chat. You are an adopted Canadian, so I hope you were either sitting somewhere with your feet up or getting paid at least double time for working. And support the Undone. Mutual friend of ours, Brian, is the guitar player. Brian, if you're out there scrolling through the Facebook and stop on this, get well soon, buddy. He just had a minor surgical procedure done today. He seems to be recovering nicely with a pizza in his hospital bed from the last post I saw. So shout out to Brian. Shout out to the Undone. Great little rock band out of Ohio. Check them out. They are available on Spotify. And there's new music in the works, and they're going to be out there in the summertime. So if you're listening in Ohio, keep an eye out for that. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. You see guys are starting to sign. We have Tyler Johnson retires from the NHL after 13 seasons. That's a respectable run. He's looks to have his name on the cup with the Tampa Bay Lightning a couple of times. So, I mean, that's right there. That tells the Lightning have a job opening for somebody out there. And that's just the circle of it. Like, some of these guys are like, yeah, you know what? That's it for me, for whatever reason. And we talked about Joe Thornton last show. And I saw the other day a video of Lanny McDonald and Ron Francis talking with him, letting him know that he was going into the Hockey Hall of Fame this year.
All right.
So, Big Joe is getting his getting his flowers, and that's pretty hot on the heels of his retirement too. Like that's a first ballot.
Yeah, it's been a few years. I don't know how many years they have to wait to go first ballot, but Joe Thornton was a pretty big part of the game in his day. So those are the people you want in the Hall of Fame. You want to be able to take your kids in or your grandkids in and say, hey, look there, and be able to read their story, although it's a little shorter than what their actual stories are. But those are good things, and it doesn't happen for everybody. So good job, Joe. An impact guy.
It is
Boston and in San Jose.
It is a 3-year wait. You have to be out for 3 years. So, I mean, that sounds about right to me.
Yeah.
Joe Thornton. Let's just find out. Let's ask Google, see when he retired. So anything else standing out to you while I look this up here? It's like, he retired in 2022 from the Panthers. So this is his first year.
Yeah. Yeah.
of
Yeah. Good
eligibility.
for him.
And the
Good
computer
for
is
him.
actually starting to warm up. It's stretched out, so it's not giving me as many problems.
Mm,
And you know what? Well deserved.
mm.
If nothing else, just for the beard. I mean,
Yeah.
he was. There's not a lot of airflow down on the ice, but I mean, he had a full sail going there.
He did. Yeah. As if you can get a breeze from behind, it helps out when you get to be that old. Hey, Keith.
Yeah. Hey Keith, how you doing, buddy? We were just discussing Big Joe Thornton there, from one of your favorites. I know, if you hadn't heard, he is going into the Hall of Fame. Thanks everybody for joining us. Let's see here. Jeff wants to know, what's the scouting report on Pius Suter for the Canucks?
Mm. Unfortunately, I didn't follow enough.
Mm-hmm.
I'm certainly going to catch up to where the Canucks are before they go to rookie camp. I think they're having their annual rookie camp in Penticton, and they
Mm-hmm.
usually, or tournament, I guess they call it. They bring the rookie teams in from Calgary and Edmonton
Mm-hmm.
and Vancouver and usually Seattle, and they run a little round robin with the top two teams playing off. It's kind of a weekend kickoff, and
Mm-hmm.
for sure he'll be there. It'll be interesting to see.
Yep.
I'm not sure who all. I think it's pretty limited to rookie or first year
Mm-hmm.
players. So I don't think that half the American Hockey League team from from Abbotsford will show up to play there. Although that would be pretty cool.
I mean, that doesn't sound like how it used to be. I could
No,
be
no.
incorrect. Like, I don't remember these sort of little tournaments, because I mean, that in itself, I mean, you could sell a lot of tickets to that.
Yeah,
And hopefully
it
they are.
happens like a month before the season begins
Mm-hmm.
too. Because I mean, we're talking off season, and everybody says, "Oh, good, we're gonna." This goes way back to my stories in the
Mm-hmm.
1960s. Uh,
Yep.
I had a guy who was a little smarter than everybody else, and I actually went to training camp, not having sat around all summer long drinking beer and eating hamburgers. It was a year before I had met your mom, and I got a chance to go to Toronto's camp, and I trained with Bill Hayward and some of his staff. He was the unarmed combat and fitness and training officer in Petawawa. But
Mm-hmm.
before that, I'd met Bill when I was a kid in Kingston, and in Kingston, I had played with the all-star team for the city, and Bill actually asked, and the year before asked if I would be interested in playing with the camp kids because they never get a chance to do anything with themselves. And long story short, I decided to stay and play in the camp, and we did pretty well. Or the Kingston didn't, but they were in the A division, and I think we were in B or C.
Mm-hmm.
But it Bill took me in Petawawa, and we trained for 4 months. I had played a little bit of hockey, and I wasn't too happy with the kind of hockey player I had to be to keep playing.
Mm-hmm.
I had to take a lot of broken noses and give out a lot of broken noses, so that wasn't I. It, despite looking like I had the temperament for it on the ice, off the ice,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't really what I wanted to be. So I told him I was done. I was going to be looking for a job, and he said if he had a better chance, would you take a better chance at? And I said, well, sure, but I mean, I didn't know what better chance I could have other than go for somebody else and be a throw down the gloves and deliver punches to the nose for other unfortunate people.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a call about 4 days later from Johnny Bauer and the Toronto Maple Leafs asking me if I'd be interested in attending camp. And I went to the camp after being with them, because when Bill told me, Bill was the fitness and conditioning person for both the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Detroit Red Wings back in
Mm-hmm.
his day. And I didn't think he'd really have any personnel swing, but he got me into camp, and he said, "Are you going to camp?" And I, oh God, yeah, this is, Johnny Bauer called to ask if I was interested in coming to camp. And he said, one of our staff members has recommended you should be given the opportunity. Well, I mean, they had all the information on the hockey that I'd played and the college hockey I played.
Mm-hmm.
And, it wasn't exactly what you would call a free shot to the NHL. It was pretty basic.
I mean, a foot in the door is sometimes all you need.
Yeah, and it was somebody else's foot at the time anyway. So for 4 months, I got up 6 days a week and would run 6-7 miles first thing in the morning, and then come back and work out with Bill or one of his staff members, and lift upper body weights, and then go home and have lunch and have a little rest, and then come back and do lower body weights, and then go home and have supper, and then come back and wrestle with the Canadian unarmed combat team. So that was pretty fun. That was.
I mean, that.
They're a little surprised that civilian beat the crap out of most of them. So
I mean, I don't know if I'd put that on the standard off-season training regimen for most hockey players, but I feel like maybe some of that was part of the reason you were being typecast as a certain amount of players. Like, oh, have you seen this guy throw? Holy shit!
Yeah. Well, I had the background as a kid. I was Golden Gloves 2 years. One in Alberta and one in Ontario, and I did pretty good at that too. So I had a lot of fun at that. But anyway, we trained, and just before I went to camp, I had a bit of a confidence crisis, and I told Bill like 4 days before I was supposed to go to camp I wasn't going, and he kind of lit me up a little bit. I said, I don't want to embarrass you or my mom and dad, or I don't want to embarrass anybody. And he kind of gave me a message, and I listened, and we went to camp, and we did really well. We got a contract to be a Toronto Maple Leaf at some point, and that's when I tore my Achilles tendon 10 days into, showing up at the farm team. So that was the end of a hockey career. I tried hard though. The next summer, I met your mom, and I was trying to train, but I mean, running 7 hours or 7 miles a day, and the weights were fine, but the legs just weren't. The Achilles tendon just was not going to be what it was to be. So,
and that would have been early mid-70s.
Very early 70s.
Very early 70s. So, and you know what? I'm not gonna, I don't want to sound here and just dump all over the medical professionals or anything like that, but I feel like maybe they hadn't really got a handle on putting athletes back together surgically just yet.
Well, certainly not me, because
some incredible advances since, but the Achilles to this day is one of those ones where it's like, you tore your what? Yeah, okay, we're going to send you to see so-and-so, this great surgeon.
But I played for 3 weeks on it.
Yeah, okay, that also makes sense.
But this is the medical expectation in those days. I played on cortisone shots and morphine shots.
And that's something we had discussed a show or two ago about the guys that are hiding their injuries throughout the playoffs, that are not quite forthcoming because they want to get on the ice, they want to contribute. I'm not saying they're all looking for that end of the Disney movie moment where it's the big save or the shootout or the overtime or whatever. It's just I can do it. I can get through this one game, so I'm fine. It's just it's just a stiff shoulder. I'm fine. It's like, yeah, no, your rotator cuff is completely torn off the bone, or it's like it's just a twisted ankle. It's like, dude, I can see your quad is rolled up inside your leg. It's not just, and if we talked about it, and it's one of those things where you get to a certain point, and playoffs being the number one, especially if you're in the finals. You get that Monty Python Black Knight syndrome. It's like, tis just a scratch. Your arm's laying on the floor.
Yeah.
Just
Well,
a
I
scratch.
mean,
I'm good.
yeah,
Next arm comes off.
in those days, let's say the bottom half of your team were
Hmm.
looking at losing their jobs if they
Hmm.
got injuries and they weren't considered in the top half of the team. There are young kids that bring up and give them their opportunity. And, in those days, not that we're making millions of dollars, but, you're making more than a year's
Hmm.
wages of a pretty good wage earner, in the general public. And then you're looking at most of us in those days didn't have a whole lot of education.
Hmm.
So jobs were pretty slim and far between unless you knew
Hmm.
somebody that gave you a job that got you to work. So to feed your family, you needed to keep playing,
Yeah.
and so you would hide them. And or the team would need you even injured, and the big secret for them is not many professional athletes, if they know another professional athlete has an injury, won't use that to their advantage because
Hmm.
you played to win. And so you can lose on two ends. You can lose on your own end, and you can if the team happens to or like they used to do, oh, he's out because he's got a quad injury or an ankle injury. Well, the first time he steps on the ice, he's playing with that ankle injury. Some
Hmm.
Yahoo is going to slash the shit out of his ankles until you can't play.
Well, I
That's
mean,
what they
that's
did.
if you, yeah, you don't want to let the injuries get out there. Because there is always going to be that one dude, at least one on the other side of the ice, going, it's like,
He's fighting for his
I gotta
position.
put you down.
He's fighting for his position. He's fighting for his team. If he can, that's what pro sports was. That's still what it's about. Only there's a whole lot more leeway and consideration for health nowadays. But
Yes.
the coaches spend hours and hours and hours every day going over videotapes of opposition teams,
Hmm.
trying to expose whatever there may be in terms of weakness. And if that weakness is an injury on another player, then they're going to try and expose it
Hmm.
because it's because what they do.
Well, I mean,
Coaches
especially if
use
you gotta.
somebody said, "Geez, when you were coaching, like what did you do all day long? I mean, you got an hour and a half practice, and that's it for the day." Oh, I only wished. I
No,
only
no,
wished.
that's a fairly ridiculous statement because you have all sorts of stuff. You do have the game footage. You do have, I mean, you might have to go and deal with a player's personal problems. God forbid you have a life that needs some attention to it as well. But I mean, you got to be talking about at this time of the year. I would imagine you're sitting down with your scouts and your GMs going, look, I've just lost a key defenseman to a call up or a retirement or a trade. What are you going to do to help me out get this defenseman? This is what I need. This is what I want.
Yeah.
Here's that sort of thing. I would imagine there's a list with names on it somewhere going, here, do what you can do. You're going right into, for
Yeah.
for the guys in the big leagues, they're looking directly, I would imagine, at the draft.
Yeah.
It's like, because the NHL draft it's
Well,
over, is it not?
the
I
draft,
forget.
I mean, other than finding the few players that can immediately step up into, is a 3 or 4 year guess. You
Mhm.
know, like this is a player he was in junior hockey. This is what his size is. This is what his intellect is. This is what this is. This is what that is. Are we going to need that in 4 years?
Mhm.
Can we take him and put him on the farm team and develop him to a higher end elite player that we can use? I mean, probably one of the best teams at developing players back in the days. Well, not that long ago, 10 years ago or so was Detroit.
Mhm.
Detroit became a powerhouse on having
Oh, yeah.
developed their young players in their farm system. And then a lot of people started looking at their farm systems, instead of looking at, players playing now. Let's look at what this player can offer us a few years down the road. All of, or just about all of, or a lot of the Detroit players on those winning teams came from development systems in the American Hockey League. A lot of those Russians did. They come over and play for a year or two before they'd step up to the NHL, and within a year or two, they're superstars. So credit has to be given, to, that level for providing their team with what they're going to need for a future, so that's what the draft is about for the future in terms of, taking your guess, and what free agency is what can I do to help my team the next time it steps on the ice. Trades are all about what I can do to make my team better the next time they step on the ice. Either better by getting rid of something or better by bringing something in. I mean, there's always two ends of that stick to look at. Always. And
well, I mean, ideally, if you could solve both problems, but how often you get that opportunity, right? I mean, you're going to be juggling for 3 months until, the season gets rolling, going, okay, what do I got here? What do I got there? And then you have, you do have these things that pop up during the summer. Unfortunately, players do have a personal life. And if you go across the pond and look at proper football, we just lost a major, Jota was just killed in a car accident over in the UK. And I have a friend of mine that is a diehard supporter of the club and is just absolutely devastated. And here's a guy that is, he ain't showing up. There's nothing you can do about it. He ain't showing up. You got a big hole in your roster, and you got a big hole in your life as well. Like, I don't want to reduce it to, just a hole in the roster either, but here's a team that is personally involved with this person. So they're going to have a brutal time just coming to grips with that. And at the same time, there are people in offices whose job it is to fill this hole. And that's, I know you've had the unenviable position of losing a player like that at one point. And it's got to just, there's no good aspect to turn, because a lot of people, it's like, I can't deal with this right now. I can compartmentalize and I can go to work. Well, guess what your job is. So, stuff like that happens. I mean, we saw it last January. I think a year ago, January, we lost a couple of guys riding their bikes. Right out in New Jersey, I believe. Very talented hockey players, and I'm struck. I've been out in the sun, and my brain is showing it. It's some sort of pudding consistency right now, and nothing's firing because I can't. I had their name, and I can't. For the life of me, I can't remember.
I have the same thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, there you go. So that's where we're at. So if anybody wants to jump in with information, because I'm a little bit cooked at this point in my day. So let's get into the younger crowd at this point. So school's about a week out now. So we got these younger kids. Summer break starts. Players are now sort of looking at how to deal with their summer, how to structure their summer at the end of the hockey season for these high school age kids, these elementary school age kids that want to move up. It's like, you know what? I didn't like my position last season as far as where I was in the pecking order, not necessarily the actual position on the ice or the grass that they're playing with. Because let's remember, it's all sports. Really, the drills differ, but it's all sports. There's an off season. If you want to move up, if you want to improve, you got to do something about that in the off season. You mentioned it. You didn't sit around drinking beer and eating burgers all summer. So at some point, you have to begin thinking about it. So spring hockey starts. Okay.
Right away.
Spring hockey also ends, right?
Mhm.
And it's not a very long season. It doesn't get too deep into the summer. Well, usually once the school season or the school year ends, all the sports are wrapped up because it's really tough to get people to commit to a full summer program because they want to be out. They're going to the lake. They're going on vacation. They want to be doing other things, or at least their family does. The player may not, or the player might, and he's being pushed for it. But we won't get into that just now. So, at what point do you think it's healthy to really start diving into it? Like, do you want to sort of, I'm going to take a couple of weeks, or take the first half of the summer, and then mid-July I'm going to pick this up, I'm going to get ready for tryout season, I'm going to go hard? Or is it more of a take some downtime, but get into the gym, say 3 times a week or 4 times a week, do dry land or whatever you can? I mean, hockey's great. You get a piece of plexiglass and you can knock down a fence with it all summer long if you want, but that's only one aspect of the game. What do you feel about the more effective way to do this? And you're probably going to tell me something like it depends on the player, which is true. But there's an enjoyment factor, there's family factors, and there's I need to improve factors that we'll
There's
call it
all
the
kinds
obsessive
of distractions, and
Mhm.
that's what they're called, is distractions. But it's also called life. You know, where do you want to take your life? I mean, some kids, I mean, if you're an elite athlete and you're really committed to being an elite athlete in that sport, other than your designated downtime, which if you're an elite athlete, you have people who will do that for you, either doctors or whatever, chiropractors, anybody that you believe is interested in seeing you do better. And I think most of the recommendation that those people would or should make, in at least my opinion, is you need to take some downtime. But there's 2 types of downtime too. There's physical and there's mental. And a lot of people don't consider mental time when you're not playing as important at all. But there's less physical stress, although there's more mental stress. If you approach it in the right way, it works. If you approach it in the wrong way, like the wrong type of physical training, it it can make people crazy. That you want a commitment level that's going to be good for you personally. But I've always sort of recommended that people take some downtime, and their downtime is to go and play more hockey. So then you come back to let's do less hockey time, let's do more mental time, let's do more physical training time. In other words, make yourself stronger. Some kids will, well, if I'm going to be stronger, I'm just going to play more hockey. But you have to have made significant a number of changes for that to be of value, or you're just practicing the same thing that you're doing, only doing it more. And I'm not 100% believer that just doing something more is actually getting better at it. Certainly doing more will make you better, but the overall look at it is that repeat has been a big part of my philosophy. But there's a point where do, but do it differently. And your body can adjust to not doing just exactly the same thing, and you can grow better and stronger as an athlete by doing, get out and learn to mountain bike ride or weight lift. I don't care, just don't head. So many young hockey players finish and they're done the day, and that, or even before they're done, I know players who are in playoffs and they're playing spring hockey because their spring hockey team started.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually a little less strenuous for some people. For some people, they put on a skates and grab a stick and a puck and put on some equipment and go and battle for a puck. Doesn't matter whether it's the middle of the season playoffs or spring hockey. They can be very competitive in what
Mm-hmm.
maybe shouldn't be as competitive a position. So, I mean, I'm the godfather of spring hockey. There was no
Mm-hmm.
spring hockey till I started it in Vancouver. I built it in Vancouver and then built it in the lower mainland. Well, simply because your brother was allergic to every blade of grass that grew. I mean, he was so
Yeah.
sick when he
Yeah.
got out. He loved to play baseball and he
Oh,
loved to do a
he
lot of
did.
those outside stuff, playing soccer. But you know what? We could put him in the arena a couple of times a week during the summer and he wouldn't get sick. I mean, he got
Mm-hmm.
deathly sick. He, you know, we went to a baseball field that just had a grass grown or grass cut. He within an hour his nose is bleeding. I mean, it was that bad. I thought, well, we'll do spring hockey, and then some other kids asked, "Oh, well, can I play with you?" You know, because it was just me and Greg and a couple of friends,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, "Oh, sure." And all of a sudden, we had like a team size, and we're scrimmaging a little bit, and somebody else in Vancouver said, "Oh, we were playing spring hockey." And then somebody, after we got that going, it was the interior. And then all of a sudden we were working with a thing called Vancouver Super Series.
Mm-hmm.
And, you
That
know,
was an interesting concept. I think
oh,
there's probably a whole show on that one,
I,
especially because you did pull
I'm, I'm
a hell
stopping.
of an all-star game together one year. But we'll move
Yeah,
past that for
that
right
was an
now.
NHL All-Star game.
Yeah,
Thank you,
I'm
Joe
aware.
Sakic and Pavel Bure, and for a charity game in the summer, it was pretty amazing,
Mhm.
wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but we'll get into the Vancouver Super Series another time. That might be something
yeah.
to talk about.
Anyway, it
Um,
spread. It spread across the whole country. All of a sudden, but they weren't putting leagues together. That's what kind of bothered me. They
mhm,
were putting super all-star teams together to compete against each other, and that's what created. Somebody else started the Super Series. I just sort of threw
mhm.
some names into a hat where they wanted to play a higher caliber than what we were playing. They could try that, but it was a very expensive procedure too in those days for
Mhm.
kids to do. And
Yeah.
but kids flocked to it, just flocked to it. It was
And it was good because it was again, it sort of ended about the same time school ended. Um, and kids that age, it have one huge drawback with hockey, and every one of them is the exact same thing. They're still growing, and the gear's not cheap. So I would imagine spring hockey also has the benefit of it. Well, at least he got some good use out of it because, some kids put it in their bag and they go to gear up for, you know, uh,
next year and
preseason
they
tryout
outgrow.
camps and nothing fits. Um,
God bless goalie parents. Those
oh,
people, oh,
oh my God.
they practically had to remortgage their houses to keep their kids in goal equipment, especially if
Hmm.
they started them young as goaltenders. And lots of minor hockey associations, even today, would supply equipment to goalies or kids to put it on to be goalies. But
And
if you wanted to
I
be
want to
just a
put a
goalie,
pin
you
in
had to
that
buy
too.
your own. Huh?
And that's a good way to figure out who's adept at goal. I don't think, I mean, I don't want to say nobody decides to show up and play goalie every time. Um, but there are those people. There really are. If it's a position, somebody wants to play it.
Yeah.
But I mean, the team would have the goalie equipment or a couple sets of it. And it would rotate which kid. So every kid would kind of get a shot at it early. It was
Hmm.
one set of gear. I'm imagining, they rolled it into the price of the league, but they didn't have to worry too terribly much about the gear not fitting because kids are, with the odd exception, they're
Yeah.
all about the same
Yeah.
size at about the same time. There are some that go either way and don't fit the average, but it saves a lot of expense for the parents. It's stuff that'll be good for a couple of years if it sticks with this age group team. And it's
Yeah, and you were
brilliant. And then
talking
you
young
can go,
kids
like,
now.
I know you want to play forward really bad, but every time
I
we put
played a
you
trick
in
on your
net,
brother. I don't know whether he ever knew this, but he was desperate to try goalie. And I mean, Greg was a pretty good hockey player in
uh-huh.
his age group. And we were in a tournament and he couldn't have been any more than 7 or
Hmm.
he was pretty young anyway, but he wanted to be a goalie. He wanted to be a goalie. And I was coaching the team. And finally, we went to a tournament, and one of the teams in that tournament was like killing everybody by 20 goals, literally by
Hmm.
20 goals. And, Greg had asked again, oh, can I be a goalie? So I said, okay, you can play in the second game. Well, the second game, I knew who it was and who it was against.
Hmm.
And, they came out and they only beat us 8-1. I thought he'd done a super job. He refused to put on goaltending equipment again because, he
He let
lost.
8 in. Yeah.
Didn't want anything to do with losing.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
said, yeah,
He,
we'd have probably scored more goals if you'd been out, Greg. What I didn't say is I'd have probably scored 20 more goals if you hadn't
yeah,
been there
it's like,
because he's a pretty good athlete. There's
you know
one for
what?
his mom. I'm pretty sure she knew that one. But
We'll have
yeah, he
to,
never really asked to be a goalie ever again.
I do remember him dying to be a goalie, and then just dropping it. I didn't remember the exact details behind the story. I may never have known the
Yeah.
exact details behind.
Burnaby Winter Club beat
Uh,
South Surrey or Richmond, somebody 24-1. The game, their game before that one. And I thought, oh God, well, he'll be pissed. They'll score 20 goals on 8. They only scored 8. It
yeah,
was phenomenal.
yeah. I mean, I'm
But he didn't
sure
want me goalie. I
know,
lost. That's it. I'm not
because
playing to lose.
I'm sure in hindsight, if you were to dig up the records of that tournament, and he'd look at it and go, "Oh, I was looking at that the wrong way." It's like, yeah, it was. If they're racking up a dozen or 2 goals against every other team and they only got 8, you might have found the team goalie right there. And that's what I like about that concept for, age groups. There is a point where you kind of got to pick, and that's, probably when you start getting to about the double digits age wise. But for kids young like that, save everybody some money and give them a shot. I mean, I want to play forward. I want to be the next Wayne Gretzky, Steve Yzerman, Sidney Crosby, Connor McDavid, whoever.
Yeah.
But it's like, you're the best goalie we have, or vice versa. I want to be the next Dominic Hasek, Patrick Waugh, pull your Hall of Fame goalie out of there. And it's like, yeah, but when you played forward, you went, you were, nobody could catch you, nobody could touch you, and you scored twice in the first period.
Yeah.
And and not to leave the defenseman out, but the concept stands. I mean, you might want to play defense, but you get pushed around too much, or it's not adept for you. But you try all those little things, and especially, like I said, with the goaltending equipment, holy fuck, because
Well, goaltending equipment now for an elite goalie at age 12 or 13 is about between $15,000 and $20,000. Holy crap.
See, I thought you were about to use a different word there. I thought the word 100 was coming out of your mouth.
Well, that's over a period of time.
Yeah, no, still, I mean, that's
Yeah, no.
that's a car.
Goaltender pads now are about, decent
Holy
ones.
cow.
We're not talking top line, are about $2,500. Goaltending gloves are anywhere from $700 to $1,500 for a pair.
Wow.
Goalie sticks are $400 or $500 a stick now because of they're all carbon and whatnot.
Yeah,
The
sticks.
goalie's mask is going to cost you $300 or $400, but you can't just get a mask. You've got to take it to a specialist to have it painted up, and that'll
Oh
cost
yeah,
you
you gotta have
$500.
you
And
gotta get it
it's
decorated.
goalie skates are players think they're tough at $500 or $600. Goalie skates are $1,300-$1,400 a piece.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you're a good goalie at a decent level, if you're an elite goalie, it's like just out of this world. And if you've got to replace it because they grow out of it once a year, halfway through the year, and that happens, they hit 12 or 13 and they start to grow like crazy. And
Yeah,
now
that
you're looking
that
at plateau twice
mid-season.
that year. And that's what I said. Literally, you almost have to go on. If you're a lower income earner, then you can't
Yeah,
afford for your
it's gonna
kid
be.
to be a goalie.
Yep.
It's hard to be a hockey player.
Oh yeah.
But lots of communities are doing the best that they can to raise their own money and see that more kids get fit. I did some work for quite a few years for Bauer equipment, and they gave away all that equipment. We'd run hockey camps for kids who were underprivileged or were single parents or whatever, and we'd hold 2 or 3 hockey camps a year. And Bauer would come in and give them skates and shin pads and pants and a sweater, helmet, a stick, gloves. Give it to them. Simply because by the time they're 14 and they have to pay for it, they'll get their money back. No, I take my hat off to them for having done that kind of program. I did mine out of a couple of Canlan arenas, and we would get. The idea was to get the kids into their equipment, and some of them didn't skate at all, but get them into their equipment, get them on the ice, and run a program for 6 weeks for an hour once a week. And by the end, a lot of those kids were coming out and enjoying the game. So they may have created more fans than they did players, but at least, there are a lot of immigrant kids there too. I love it when they do those programs. Like, I love when they do the indigenous programs. I love it when I see guys like, like Danny Hodgson get involved. Like those kids are incredibly athletically talented. I look at what Danny Hodgson was at 5'8", 97 pounds.
We almost got through the show without you using that name. But you know what? Danny's a great guy.
I was scared peeless, honest to God, for that whole year, especially the first 2 months, and didn't let that on at all. And when we had to put him in public school, he wasn't old enough to get into high school. Yeah. Which the high school was right across the street from the arena. It just complicated everything.
But no, these programs out there, they exist, and it's good to see because there is no cheap sport for kids. It used to be, put them in soccer. It's a cheap sport.
Well, that's because everybody wants the best, and you should have the best for your kids.
And
you want the best fields, you want the best balls, you want the best clothes. Unfortunately, hockey and football and baseball to a certain degree, they have some really expensive equipment.
And it really does create it puts a paywall on sports.
It does.
There are a lot of people that, I've had friends, with their kids. It's like, I thought I was signing them up for the cheap sport, but the soccer shoes are ridiculous. And, the cost of it.
You were signing them up for the cheap sport.
Well, I mean, it's cheap. Well, it's cheaper. Right. And especially if you get the kid is good or the kid wants to play on that, that team that does travel and there's out of town tournaments. And I mean, Lord howdy, I've been to some interesting arenas throughout BC and Alberta because family vacation means we're going to go play hockey in the West Edmonton Mall. I don't want to go to the West Edmonton. Okay, I guess I'm going to the West Edmonton Mall. I haven't been to Mexico or Disneyland, but boy, howdy, I've been to every Sparrow Fart rink in BC.
You have, haven't you?
I wasn't even playing. And it did not always lead to my best moods and best behaviors.
This is 50 years worth of apologies, Matt. Hey, and you took it really well. You always felt
to a degree. It's that I was not always the easiest child to deal with. However, even in that stages, there were some days where it's like, oh, we're going to murder them both for different reasons. But we won't get into that. We'll try to keep it a little bit more civilized here. But I mean, it's good to see these sporting programs. So that would be great to talk to some people that are running these programs, because it's putting a paywall between a potentially great athlete and whatever they want to do is kind of unconscionable. It's just the way of the world. Like, to go back to the growth spurt thing, yeah, that mid-season growth spurt as a goaltender, that's I mean, that's financially crippling. That's some Tiger King style. I will never financially recover from this. We as a family kind of lucked out because Greg's growth spurts would kind of coincide with, the new year. So he got skates for Christmas a lot.
Yeah.
I got the Nintendo and he got skates because there were years it's like, oh, it's only a couple more weeks. It's only a couple more weeks. Just squeeze that foot in there. And it was almost like body morphing torture and trying to get his foot into the skate at the end of the season. God help you. You went, deep into the playoffs, or spring hockey was around the corner. But yeah, it's brutal. I mean, that's it. It's nice to see that this is a charity that is out there, and it's not just for hockey, it's sports, period. There's lots of organizations that do that. So I mean, if you're out there and you are one of these people that's like, I want to get, like, my kid wants to so bad, I don't have the money, look into some of these things.
Because they will sponsor
necessarily
they will sponsor sport camps too. And those sport camps can be, they're, I don't know how many are free, but a lot of them have reduced prices because the people running them are being sponsored by, in my days, people like Cooper and nowadays it's Bauer and Easton but check them out. Usually private ones for elite athletes are incredibly expensive. Like I always thought, figure skating can't cost too much. I know what it costs for ice. And then I got working out of an arena that had the Canadian national group skating in it. And I was talking to some of those parents. I mean, they have like 100 kids in there that are there all day long, and they'll pay anywhere. By the time they buy costumes and go to figure skating events, they'll spend between 20 and 40 grand for their kid to skate that year. Coaches were really expensive. Coaches charge by the 15 minutes. That's how much time you get with a coach.
I mean, we also, as you were, as Greg was sort of going through the early teens and hockey, doing the minor hockey, we had very close family friends. Greg's best buddy was playing on the same team as him more often than not, but his buddy's sister and their mom big into figure skating.
Oh yeah.
So we did sort of see both sides of the coin, and it just
Lindsay has turned into an incredible athlete, Matt.
Oh yeah, no, she's a great runner.
Marathons all over the freaking
and you know what, that
will be all over the world.
I want to sort of, let's make that sort of the entryway to my last point here, as we're about an hour, and apparently I have to go dig up my yard.
Happy digging, by the way.
Woohoo! It's going to be wonderful. It's going to be wonderful. I'll be fine. Yeah. It's fine. Summer training.
Yes.
Is it? Now, obviously, if you have a weak spot, you want to be working on that. Is there something absolutely detrimental, big time on the do not let this slip list? I would personally think cardio, but hockey cardio is one of those unique things because it's not just running. It's a very specific motion.
Depends on what kind of a sport you're in, Matt. If you're in an aerobic sport or if you're in an anaerobic sport. Running, everybody does running of some sort. I hated running. For me to run that 7 miles every day for 4 months to get ready to go to a hockey camp, I ran it pretty quick by the end of this.
Well, I mean, if you're gonna do it, get it over with, right?
But that's the thing I really dislike most. I loved going in and working in upper body strength, and I didn't mind pushing weights. And I really love to go in and wrestle with the wrestling team. That was beat up them army guys.
And that wrestling in itself is a very different type of cardio.
Yeah, it is. It's a real
It's so
it's a real
it's
explosive strength sport.
mhm.
Real explosive strength
Now you
for me,
can't
for
go in there
whatever.
and
Yeah.
double leg the
Oh, no,
defenseman,
no, no.
but,
We were like
it will
Roman
be
Greco wrestling type
it
of
would
stuff.
be I could definitely see how, these learning to move another human being that doesn't wanna be moved, I
Mhm.
can definitely see an aspect where that could be useful, um, but the motion of skating is very different from running,
Oh, yeah.
um,
Love skating.
and
It's,
so does the
the
cardio
secret to
training
skating,
there.
Matt the
Yes?
secret to skating, Matt, it's pretty simple, and it's nothing like what anybody thinks. It's balance and carried momentum for
Mhm,
speed. So the least resistance you have to the ice, the faster you're going to be. There was a big controversy when I was a kid coming up as to whether, you know, you should be a wide tracker and on inside edges all the time, or whether you shouldn't be, whether you should be trying to be on single edges, and that if you wanted to be speed, you use the minimal amount of edging as far as that goes. But hockey isn't just about who's the fastest to the other end.
mhm,
I mean, everything goes left, goes right, goes up, goes down.
mhm,
So being agile enough to be able to use the edges to get through that as quick as you could is what creates the speed.
mhm,
It's yeah, because a lot of people come to me and and their technique or come came to me and their technique is brutal, and yet they're a pretty good hockey player. So it doesn't
mhm.
stop you from being a pretty good hockey player.
Well,
But the
there's
scenario then is, if you're a pretty good hockey player and you're a poor skater, what if we teach you to be a good skater
mhm,
on top of you have the natural ability to go? And that's kind of what I kind of clung into on one end or the other. Come to me as a really, really good skater. Yeah, lots of speed and good carry momentum. Then, we'd add as much agility as we could and strengthen your upper body so you have better control of the puck. You have to be careful when you're strengthening your upper body for hockey too, because you can be less flexible, and
mhm.
you've got to be pretty flexible. So
Well,
there,
if you get
now
too
you've got
rigid,
the
you're
whole
gonna hurt.
55 years all in the last 3 minutes.
Mhm. Yeah,
So, fun.
so with last little bit here, um, with the differences, like, you can ride the bike, you
Mhm,
can go and, do some sort of combat sport involving the grappling and
mhm. Yep. I lost you, Matt. Are you coming back? Well, everybody, it looks like we've lost Matt somehow. I'm uh, I'm not sure you haven't lost me too, but I'll wait here for a couple of seconds. Anyway, what I would like, if anybody is still listening, please send in a topic. Matt picks the topics, and we go pretty much with whatever we're going to do. We don't practice anything. Everything is off the cuff. Uh, I'm not sure my cuff is that good, but I want to, encourage anybody with any kind of questions. If you don't want to come on with us, send them to Matt before. Something that you might be interested in, or I've dealt with a lot of different athletes other than just hockey players, a fair number of soccer and baseball players too. So um, that's just about all I can say. I'm not used to being out here on my own and taking my cues. So I want to thank anybody who's still watching. Thanks very much. And remember, be great because you can. Thanks a lot. Catch you next week.
Okay, so that was weird. I've lost internet at some point here, just completely dropped out. Don't even know if this is still recording, so I'm gonna have to do some editing on this one. And I have definitely lost Doug. So if you stuck with us through this almost 3 minute break where we've had absolutely nothing, I hope, other than possibly me using profanity, then yeah, we'll be editing that out. I am going to do a little extra work, get this up. On behalf of Doug, thank you for joining us as always, and be great because you can.